I let go of my daughter Katie's hand for just 1 second. Literally 1 second to grab Sam's water bottle from the stroller. When I turned back around, both of them were gone. My heart stopped completely. The park was crowded with families enjoying the Saturday afternoon sunshine. Children laughing on swings, couples walking dogs. But my entire world went silent in that instant. Katie! Sam! I started shouting, spinning around frantically. My breathing became shallow and rapid. My hands trembling uncontrollably. I was a single dad. These two were everything I had in this world. No partner to call for backup. No family living nearby to help search. Just me and my twins, and now they were nowhere to be seen. The panic attacks started creeping in from the edges of my consciousness. I dropped to my knees and looked under the park benches. Ran toward the playground slides, checking behind each one. Circled the swing set 3 times, calling their names louder each time. People were staring at me with mixed expressions of concern and judgment, but I didn't care what they thought. I needed to find my children. Hot tears started streaming down my face, but I wiped them away aggressively. Crying wouldn't help. Searching would. My mind raced through terrible scenarios. What if someone took them? What if they wandered into the street? What if they were hurt and calling for me? I checked my phone with shaking hands, hoping somehow they'd know to call me even though they were only 5 years old. Nothing. My chest felt like it was being crushed under an enormous weight. Then across the open field near the duck pond I spotted them. Sam and Katie were walking alongside a tall, broad-shouldered stranger in a dark jacket. The man was walking at their pace, and both twins seemed calm, not crying or struggling. Something twisted inside my chest, a confusing mixture of sharp pain, burning anger, and overwhelming relief all colliding at once. I sprinted toward them. Sam, Katie. I practically crashed into them, pulling both children into my arms so hard that Katie let out a small surprised sound. I kissed their foreheads repeatedly, held their faces in my hands, checking for any signs of harm, then crushed them against my chest. Where did you two go? Do you have any idea how scared I was? Sam looked up at me with those heartbreakingly innocent brown eyes that always made me melt. We just wanted to see the baby ducks closer, Papa. But then we couldn't remember which direction we came from. Katie grabbed her brother's hand and pointed toward the stranger who was standing a respectful distance away. Hands in his pockets. This man found us. He asked us to describe you and then helped us look. I finally raised my eyes to properly look at the stranger. His eyes were striking dark green, intense but somehow gentle at the same time. He looked almost as shaken as I felt, which confused me. There was genuine concern etched across his features, worry lines deep around his mouth. My name is Andres," he said, extending his hands slowly like he was approaching a startled animal. I noticed them by the pond looking distressed. They were holding hands and clearly lost. I thought the best thing was to help them find their parent. My hand was still shaking when I grasped his in a handshake. His grip was firm and somehow steadying, like an anchor in stormy water. But there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. He seemed more affected by this situation than a typical Good Samaritan would be, almost personally invested in their safety. "Thank you," I managed to say, though my voice cracked slightly. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found them. I only looked away for a second and they were gone." "You don't need to explain," Andres interrupted gently, saving me from spiraling into self-blame. "They're safe now. That's what matters." He started to turn away, clearly intending to leave now that the crisis was resolved. But Sam suddenly reached out and grabbed the sleeve of his jacket. "Wait, can we have your phone number? Papa needs more friends." My face immediately flushed hot with embarrassment. "Sam, we can't just..." But Andres surprised me by crouching down to Sam's eye level with a small smile. It was the first time I'd seen him smile, and something about it did something strange to my heartbeat. "You know what, buddy? That's actually a pretty good idea. How about this: if your papa ever needs help with anything, he can give me a call." He pulled out his phone and I fumbled with mine, nearly dropping it twice before managing to open my contacts. Andres recited his number slowly while I typed it in with unsteady fingers. When I finished, he stood back up to his full height, which I realized was several inches taller than me. "Really, thank you," I said again, feeling like those words were completely inadequate for what he'd done. You didn't have to get involved, but you did anyway. Anyone would have done the same, Andres replied, though something in his tone suggested he didn't quite believe that himself. Take care of them, and yourself. He gave a small wave to the twins and walked away across the park. I stood there with one hand on each of my children's shoulders, watching his figure grow smaller in the distance. Katie tugged on my shirt. Is he going to be our friend now, Papa? I looked down at her hopeful face, then over at Sam, who was swinging our joined hands back and forth like nothing traumatic had just happened. I don't know, sweetheart, he was just being kind. But even as I said it, I kept glancing back at where Andres had disappeared around the park's edge. There was something about the way he'd looked at the twins, protective, almost tender, and the way he'd looked at me when I was falling apart, understanding rather than judgmental. Most people would have just pointed me in the right direction and left. But he'd stayed. He'd made sure we were okay before leaving. We walked back to where I'd abandoned the stroller, and I strapped both twins in even though they usually complained about it. They didn't protest this time, perhaps sensing how badly I needed them secure and close. As I pushed the stroller toward the parking lot, my phone felt heavy in my pocket, like Andres's number was a physical weight I was carrying. I had no intention of using it. He was a stranger, a helpful stranger who'd done something incredibly kind, but still a stranger nonetheless. I'd thank him silently in my prayers tonight and move on with our life. That would be the end of it, but I didn't know then that life had completely different plans. I didn't know that one moment of fear and one act of kindness would be the beginning of something that would change everything. I didn't know that the stranger who brought my children home would somehow become home itself. I kept telling myself I'd delete Andres's number from my phone. It felt strange keeping contact information for someone I'd met under such circumstances, someone I'd probably never see again. But every time I opened my contacts intending to remove it, something made me hesitate. Maybe it was Sam's insistence that I needed friends. Maybe it was the memory of how Andres had looked at my terrified face with such genuine compassion. Whatever the reason, the number stayed. A week passed. Then another. Life returned to its normal hectic rhythm: preschool drop-offs, grocery shopping with two energetic 5-year-olds, bedtime story negotiations, and collapsing exhausted into bed every night. I'd almost convinced myself that the park incident was just a strange, isolated event, a brief intersection of our lives that wouldn't repeat. Then Saturday morning arrived, and I found myself pushing a shopping cart through the produce section of our local grocery store. Katie and Sam were helping by grabbing items off shelves, sometimes things we actually needed, often things that just looked interesting to them. I was examining tomatoes and trying to explain why we couldn't buy the cookies they wanted, when Sam suddenly shrieked with excitement, "Uncle Andres!" My head snapped up so fast I actually felt something pull in my neck, and there he was, standing near the organic lettuce display with his own shopping basket, looking just as surprised to see us. Same intense green eyes, same presence that somehow felt calming despite its strength. He blinked twice like he thought we might be a hallucination. "Hey," he said, walking toward us with a cautious smile. "This is unexpected." "Small world," I replied, immediately cringing at how cliché that sounded. My mind went completely blank. What do you say to someone who rescued your children? How do you make casual conversation with someone you owe everything to? Fortunately, my twins had no such social awkwardness. Katie was already digging through my shoulder bag, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. She thrust it toward Andres triumphantly. "I made this for you at school," she announced. "It's a picture of you finding us." Andres took the drawing carefully, and I watched his expression transform. The picture was typical kindergarten art: stick figures with triangle bodies, messy hair represented by scribbles, and a bright yellow sun in the corner. But Katie had clearly worked hard on it. There were 3 figures labeled me, Sam, and Nice Man. Something soft and vulnerable crossed Andres's face as he studied the drawing. "Katie, this is wonderful. You're a really talented artist." He folded it with such care, like it was made of precious material, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "I'm going to keep this somewhere special." My heart did this strange flutter thing that I immediately tried to suppress. This was ridiculous. He was just being polite to a child. It didn't mean anything, except the way he was looking at that drawing, like Katie had given him a priceless gift, suggested it meant something to him. "Do you drink coffee?" The question burst out of Andres's mouth abruptly, surprising both of us. He looked almost as startled by his own words as I felt hearing them. Yes. My response came out as a question. Would you want to grab a cup? The three of you, I mean. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. My treat. He shifted his weight, suddenly seeming less confident. Only if you have time. No pressure. Sam was already tugging on my sleeve with both hands. Please, Papa. Please, please, please. How could I say no when both twins were looking at me with those enormous pleading eyes? And truthfully, a small part of me, a part I wasn't ready to examine too closely, wanted to say yes anyway. There was something about Andres that made me curious, made me want to understand why he seemed to care so much about 2 children he'd only met once. Okay, I agreed. Coffee sounds nice. We checked out separately and met outside the store. The cafe Andres mentioned was indeed just a short walk away, a cozy corner place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. We settled into a booth with a cracked leather seat, twins squeezing together on one side with their hot chocolates while Andres and I sat across from them with coffee. So Andres said, after a moment of comfortable silence. Single-parent life. What's that like for you? The question was casual but genuine. Most people asked out of nosiness or judgment. Andres asked like he actually wanted to understand. I wrapped my hands around my warm mug. Exhausting. Terrifying. Lonely sometimes. I glanced at the twins, who were focused on adding absurd amounts of whipped cream to their drinks. But also the best thing I've ever done. They're my whole world. Their mother? Andres asked carefully, like he was testing whether this was acceptable territory. I took a long sip of coffee before answering. She was never really in the picture. I adopted Sam and Katie when they were infants. Their birth parents couldn't care for them, and they were going to be separated into different foster homes. I couldn't let that happen, so I applied to adopt them both. Andres leaned back, processing this information. No judgment appeared in his expression, just deepening interest. That's incredible, Julian. Most people wouldn't take on that responsibility. Hearing him say my name sent an unexpected warmth through my chest. I'd always wanted to be a father. The traditional route wasn't going to work for me, so I found another way. These 2 deserved someone who would love them unconditionally. And they found that, Andres said softly. You can see it in how they look at you, how secure they feel. We talked for over an hour. Andres told me he worked as a freelance graphic designer, mostly from home, which explained his flexible schedule. He'd moved to our town 6 months ago for a fresh start after a difficult breakup. He'd always imagined having a family of his own someday but had started accepting it might not happen. When Katie spilled her hot chocolate across the table, Andres didn't flinch. He just grabbed napkins and helped clean up, making jokes that had both twins giggling instead of crying from embarrassment. When Sam asked him 17 questions about whether superheroes were real, Andres answered each one seriously and thoughtfully. As we prepared to leave, Sam delivered his second bold request of the day. Can you come to our house sometime? Papa gets lonely when we're asleep. I nearly choked on the last sip of my coffee. Sam, we can't just invite. I'd like that, Andres said, his eyes meeting mine with something that looked like hope. If it's okay with your papa, and despite every logical voice in my head telling me to keep boundaries with this person I barely knew, I heard myself say Sunday afternoon? I'll be there. Sunday morning I woke up with inexplicable anxiety twisting my stomach into knots. What had I been thinking, inviting someone I barely knew into our home? This was where my children lived, our safe space. And yet I found myself cleaning compulsively, straightening cushions that didn't need straightening, organizing toys that would be scattered again within minutes. Why are you being weird, Papa? Katie asked, watching me wipe down the already clean kitchen counter for the 3rd time. I'm not being weird, I protested weakly. You cleaned the bathroom twice, Sam pointed out from where he was building with blocks. You only do that when Grandma visits. They weren't wrong. I forced myself to stop tidying and took several deep breaths. This was just a friendly visit. Andres was simply someone who'd been kind to us, and we were returning that kindness with hospitality. Nothing more complicated than that. When the doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock, my heart jumped into my throat. I opened the door to find Andres holding a reusable shopping bag, looking slightly nervous himself, which somehow made me feel better. I brought some things, he said almost apologetically. I hope that's okay. The twins immediately swarmed him, and he laughed as they grabbed his hands and pulled him inside. I watched him take in our home, the photos covering one entire wall, the colorful artwork stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, the organized chaos that defined our life. From his bag, Andres produced 2 new board games designed for young children, a set of watercolor paints and a small potted succulent. "This one's for you," he said, handing me the plant. "I noticed you didn't have any plants in the cafe and I thought, well, succulents are supposed to be calming. Low maintenance too, which I figured might be important." I stared at the small green plant in my hands, completely thrown by this thoughtful gesture. "You didn't need to bring anything." "I know. But I wanted to." Those 3 words, "I wanted to," said with such simple sincerity, made my chest feel tight. We spent the afternoon in a way I hadn't experienced since before I became a single parent, just relaxed and easy. Andres got down on the floor with the twins and helped them set up an elaborate board game involving colorful pieces and silly rules. His laughter was genuine, not the forced enthusiasm adults sometimes use around children. He listened to their rambling stories, asked follow-up questions, and treated their 5-year-old opinions with real respect. I made snacks in the kitchen but kept finding excuses to linger in the doorway, watching how Andres high-fived Sam when he won, how he let Katie braid his hair with her tiny, clumsy fingers even though it probably hurts, how naturally he fit into our space like a puzzle piece we hadn't known was missing. After dinner, pizza that I definitely didn't stress about ordering, I took the twins upstairs for their bath and bedtime routine. When I came back down 45 minutes later, I found Andres had cleaned up all the dishes and was sitting on the couch, looking at the photo wall. "Sorry that took so long," I said. "Bedtime is always an elaborate negotiation." "Don't apologize." He patted the couch beside him. "I was just admiring your photos. You can see their whole lives here." I sat down, leaving what I thought was an appropriate amount of space between us, and looked at the pictures I saw every day. I take photos obsessively. I never want to forget a single moment with them. Their first day of preschool? Andres pointed to one photo where both twins were holding signs. Sam cried for 20 minutes. Katie told the teacher she was in charge now. Andres laughed. Then his expression turned more serious. "Can I ask you something personal?" My breath caught. "Sure. Do you like having children?" He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "Not just love them, which is obvious, but actually enjoy the day-to-day experience of being a parent?" It was such an unusual question that I really had to think about my answer. "Yes. Even on the hardest days when I'm exhausted and covered in mysterious sticky substances, I wouldn't trade it. There's something about being needed so completely, being someone's entire world. It gives everything meaning." Andres nodded slowly, his eyes distant. "I've always felt that pull toward fatherhood, that desire to protect and nurture, but my ex-partner found it overwhelming when I talked about adoption or fostering. He said I was too intense about it, too focused on something that might never happen. So he left? He left. Said I was choosing a fantasy future over our present reality." Andres's jaw tightened. "But it wasn't a fantasy. It was what I wanted my reality to become." Without thinking, I shifted closer on the couch. "His loss, anyone who can't see how much love you have to give is missing out." Andres turned to look at me then, and the intensity in his eyes made me forget how to breathe. We were closer than I'd realized, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his green irises. "Maybe meeting you and the twins wasn't random," he said quietly. "Maybe some things are meant to happen exactly when and how they do." "You really believe that?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "I'm starting to." He lifted his hand slowly, giving me plenty of time to pull away, and brushed his fingers against my arm. Even through my sleeve, the touch sent electricity through my entire body. "I know this is complicated. I know we've only known each other a couple of weeks, but I feel drawn to your family, to you, and I can't just ignore that." My brain was screaming at me to be cautious, to protect my children and myself from potential heartbreak. But my heart was screaming something entirely different. "I feel it too," I admitted. "It scares me." "What scares you most?" "That you might leave, that the twins might get attached, and then lose someone else. That I'm being foolish by letting you in so quickly." Andres's hand moved from my arm to gently touch my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "I can't promise I'm perfect. I can't promise everything will always be easy. But I can promise I don't enter people's lives lightly. When I commit to something, I commit fully. And what are you committing to? I needed to hear him say it clearly. Being here. For Katie and Sam. For you. As much as you'll let me. His eyes searched mine. I want to be part of this. Part of your family. If you'll have me. I should have said we needed more time. I should have suggested taking things slowly. Instead, I found myself leaning forward, closing that last bit of distance between us. Stay, I whispered. Please stay. When Andres kissed me soft and careful and full of promise, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been but had always been searching for. Andres had become a fixture in our daily routine. 3 weeks had passed since that first kiss on my couch, and he was now at our house almost every evening. He'd show up after work with groceries I'd forgotten to buy, help the twins with their preschool homework, and stay for dinner that we'd cook together while Katie and Sam played in the living room. Some nights he'd leave around 9. Other nights I'd find him asleep on the couch after the twins had dragged him into yet another elaborate game. But we hadn't defined what we were doing. We hadn't talked about the future or put labels on whatever this was growing between us. We existed in this comfortable limbo where he was clearly more than a friend, but we hadn't said the words that would make it official. The problem was that my feelings were evolving way past comfortable. Every time Andres laughed at something ridiculous Sam said, my chest would constrict with an emotion so intense it almost hurt. When he'd brush past me in the kitchen and his hand would briefly touch my lower back, my entire body would become hyper-aware of his proximity. And worst of all, when he'd kneel down to kiss both twins goodnight before leaving, I'd find myself imagining what it would feel like if he stayed, if he kissed me goodnight too, if he was here when I woke up in the morning. I tried to convince myself I was being irrational. We'd only known each other a month. People didn't fall this hard this fast. This was probably just gratitude mixed with loneliness and physical attraction. It would fade once the novelty wore off. Except it wasn't fading. It was intensifying. Thursday night, Andres arrived with ingredients for homemade pizza. The twins were ecstatic, covering themselves in flour while helping roll out the dough. I watched Andres guide Katie's small hands, showing her how to spread the sauce in circular motions, and something cracked open inside my chest. This wasn't just attraction. This wasn't just gratitude. This was something much more dangerous. After dinner and the twins' bath time, I came downstairs to find Andres had already cleaned the kitchen and was standing on my back porch, looking up at the stars. I grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and joined him outside. You don't have to always clean up, I said, handing him a bottle. I know. He took a long drink. But I like taking care of things here. Taking care of you. The way he said it, so casual yet so loaded with meaning, made my pulse quicken. We stood in silence for a moment, the only sounds coming from crickets and distant traffic. Julian. His voice was quieter now, almost hesitant. There's something I need to tell you. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. What is it? He turned to face me fully, and in the dim porch light I could see vulnerability written across his features. I don't come here just for Katie and Sam anymore. I mean, I love those kids like they're already mine. But that's not why I keep showing up every day. I held my breath, afraid to interrupt whatever he was trying to say. I come here because of you. Because I think about you constantly when I'm not here. Because the thought of not seeing you makes my entire day feel pointless. He set his beer down on the porch railing with a shaking hand. I have feelings for you, Julian. Real intense, terrifying feelings. My throat felt tight. Andre, wait. Let me finish. He ran his hand through his hair in agitation. I know this is complicated. I know you have 2 children who depend on you and you can't just throw caution to the wind. I know your life is already full and demanding and maybe you don't have room for this. But I can't keep pretending I'm just your friend. I can't keep leaving every night knowing I want to stay. Tears were burning behind my eyes. No one had ever said anything like this to me before. No one had ever looked at my chaotic, child-centered life and wanted to dive in head first rather than run away. You really mean that? My voice came out rough with emotion. Every word. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking if you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling. A tear escaped and rolled down my cheek. I'm scared, I admitted. I'm terrified actually, because I do feel it. All of it. More than I've ever felt for anyone. Andres reached up and caught the tear with his thumb. His hand cupping my face with such tenderness it made my knees weak. What scares you most? That you'll realize this is too much. That waking up to chaos every morning and negotiating with 5-year-olds and never having a moment of peace will eventually wear you down. That you'll leave and break not just my heart but theirs too. Look at me. He tilted my face up until our eyes met. I'm not going anywhere. This chaos you're describing, this is what I've been searching for my entire life. A family, connection, purpose. You're not too much, Julian. You're everything. Something inside me broke open completely. I closed the distance between us and kissed him with all the pent-up emotion I'd been holding back. This kiss was different from the gentle one we'd shared weeks ago. This was desperate and deep and full of everything I couldn't say out loud. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Andres rested his forehead against mine. So can we try this? Actually try. Together? Yes, I whispered. Yes. Absolutely yes. He smiled that brilliant smile that always made my heart stutter and kissed me again. Fair warning, I'm going to be obnoxiously domestic. I'll probably start keeping clothes here within a week. I laughed through my tears. The twins will be thrilled. What about you? His voice was soft but serious. Are you thrilled? I pulled him closer, wrapping my arms around him and feeling him solid and real against me. I'm terrified and thrilled and so completely overwhelmed that you're choosing us. Choosing this messy, imperfect life. It's not messy, Andres murmured into my hair. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. We stood there on the porch, holding each other until my back door creaked open and a small voice said, Papa? Why are you hugging Uncle Andres? I turned to see Katie in her pajamas. Rubbing her eyes sleepily, Andres crouched down to her level without hesitation. Because your papa makes me really happy, he told her honestly. Is that okay with you? Katie considered this seriously, then nodded. Can you read me another story? Papa does the voices wrong. Hey, I protested, but I was smiling. Andres scooped her up. I'd be honored. Come on, let's get you back to bed. As I watched him carry my daughter back inside, I realized something profound. I wasn't just falling for Andres. I'd already fallen completely. And for the first time in my life, that didn't scare me. It felt exactly right. The first 3 weeks of officially being together were perfect. Andres had a drawer at my house now. Then 2 drawers, then half my closet. The twins had completely transitioned from calling him Uncle Andres to just Andres, or sometimes, heart-stoppingly, Papa Andres. He never corrected them, never suggested it was too soon. He'd just smile and answer to whatever they called him. We existed in this blissful bubble, where our biggest challenges were deciding what to make for dinner or negotiating bedtime with 2 energetic 5-year-olds. I kept waiting for something to go wrong, for reality to intrude on our happiness. But days turned into weeks and we just kept getting stronger. Then Katie's preschool called. I was at work when my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. The school's main office. Instant dread flooded through me. Had one of the twins gotten hurt? Were they sick? Mr. Reeves, this is Principal Morrison. I need you to come to the school as soon as possible. It's about Katie's recent classroom assignment. Not an emergency then. But her tone suggested this wasn't a casual conversation either. I told my boss I had a family situation and drove to the preschool with my stomach in knots. When I arrived, I was directed to a small conference room where Principal Morrison sat with Katie's teacher, Miss Chen. Katie's family tree project was spread out on the table between them, a colorful poster board with photos and drawings. Thank you for coming so quickly, Principal Morrison said, gesturing for me to sit. We have a situation we need to discuss. I looked at Katie's project. She'd drawn 2 stick figures labeled Papa Julian and Papa Andres at the top, with lines connecting down to her and Sam. There were photos of all 4 of us at the park, at home, having dinner. It was innocent and sweet and completely honest. I don't understand, I said carefully. Is there a problem with the assignment? Miss Chen shifted uncomfortably. The project itself is wonderful. Katie worked very hard on it. But when she presented it to the class yesterday, several parents contacted us with concerns. Concerns about what exactly? My voice came out sharper than intended. Principal Morrison folded her hands on the table. Some parents feel that the content is confusing for the other children. They're asking questions about why Katie has two fathers, and these parents would prefer we don't engage in those discussions in a preschool setting. Heat flooded through my body, anger mixed with something that felt horribly like shame. You're saying Katie's family is a problem. We're not saying that, Miss Chen interjected quickly. We're just trying to navigate a delicate situation. Some families have strong personal beliefs about family structure, and my family structure doesn't fit their beliefs. So my daughter should what? Lie about her reality? I was struggling to keep my voice level. Hide the people who love her. No one is suggesting she lie, Principal Morrison said. We're simply wondering if, for school assignments, Katie might present a more traditional representation. Perhaps just list you as her parent, to avoid confusion. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Absolutely not. Katie drew her real family. The family that tucks her in every night and makes her breakfast every morning, and loves her unconditionally. I will not teach my daughter to be ashamed of that. Mr. Reeves, please sit down. We're trying to find a solution that works for everyone. There's only one solution that works for me, I said, grabbing Katie's project from the table. My daughter's family is valid exactly as it is. If other parents have questions, they can learn to explain that families come in different forms. I'm not erasing Andres from our lives to make close-minded people comfortable. I walked out before they could respond, project tucked under my arm, hands shaking with rage and something deeper, fear. Fear that the world wouldn't accept my family. Fear that Katie and Sam would face discrimination because of choices I'd made. Fear that I couldn't protect them from prejudice no matter how hard I tried. I picked up both twins early, claiming they had a doctor's appointment. Katie was quiet in the car, clearly sensing something was wrong. When we got home, she finally asked, "Did I do something bad with my project, Pop?" My heart shattered. I knelt down in front of her and took both her hands. "No, sweetheart. Your project is perfect. You told the truth about our family, and that's exactly what you should always do." Then why did the teacher look sad when I showed it? How do you explain adult prejudice to a 5-year-old? Some people don't understand families like ours yet. But that's their problem to fix, not yours. You didn't do anything wrong. When Andres arrived that evening, he had his own key now. He immediately knew something was off. After the twins were in bed, I told him everything. I watched his expression shift from confusion to anger to something that looked like determination. "This is unacceptable," he said, pacing my living room. "They're basically asking Katie to deny I exist, to pretend our family isn't real." "I know," I told them, "absolutely not. But Andres," I rubbed my face tiredly, "what if this is just the beginning? What if every school, every social situation, every public space becomes a battle?" He stopped pacing and came to sit beside me, taking my hand firmly. "Then we fight every battle, together. We don't hide, we don't apologize, and we definitely don't teach our kids to be ashamed." "Our kids," I repeated softly. It was the first time he'd said it so directly. "Yes, our kids." His voice was fierce. "Katie and Sam are mine too, Julian. Maybe not legally yet, but in every way that matters. And I'll be damned if I let anyone make them feel like our family is something to hide." "What do you want to do?" Andres's jaw set in that stubborn way I'd come to recognize. "I want to go to the next school board meeting. I want to speak publicly about this policy. I want to make sure no other family has to face this kind of discrimination. That's a big step. It'll make us very visible." "Good. We should be visible. Our family is beautiful and valid and worthy of celebration." He squeezed my hand. "But I won't push if you're not ready. This is your decision too." I thought about Katie's confused face asking if she'd done something wrong. I thought about Sam growing up learning to hide parts of his life to make others comfortable. I thought about what kind of example I wanted to set for my children. "Let's do it," I said. "Let's fight back." Andres pulled me into a tight embrace. "We're going to change things, Julian. Not just for us, but for every family that comes after us." As I held him, I felt fear and determination warring inside me. This would be hard. This would expose us to judgment and criticism. But staying silent would teach my children that their family was something to be ashamed of. And that was something I would never do. The school board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening. Andres and I spent the weekend preparing what we wanted to say, writing and rewriting our talking points, practicing in front of the bathroom mirror like nervous teenagers before a presentation. I'd arranged for a babysitter. I didn't want Katie and Sam exposed to what might become a hostile environment. As Tuesday approached, my anxiety increased exponentially. I'd never been someone who spoke publicly about personal issues. I liked my privacy, my quiet life. The thought of standing in front of a room full of strangers and defending my family made me want to throw up. "We can still back out," Andres said Monday night, reading my tension. "We can switch Katie to a different school and avoid this whole confrontation." No. I was surprised by the firmness in my own voice. Running away just pushes the problem onto the next family. We need to do this. Tuesday evening arrived too quickly. The school auditorium was packed. Apparently word had spread about the nature of tonight's discussion. I recognized some parents from drop-off and pickup, their faces ranging from supportive to openly hostile. My hands were sweating as Andres and I took seats near the front. The board went through their regular agenda items with excruciating slowness. Budget reports, facility updates, curriculum changes. I barely heard any of it, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. Then finally, open forum for community concern. Several parents spoke before us. One woman praised the school's academic programs. A man complained about parking lot traffic. Then it was my turn. Andres squeezed my hand once before I stood up and walked to the microphone. The lights were bright. I could feel dozens of eyes on me. For a moment, my mind went completely blank. Then I thought about Katie's face. Her project crumpled under her arm, asking if she'd done something wrong. And the words came. "My name is Julian Reeves. I'm a single father to twins, Katie and Sam, and this is my partner, Andres." I gestured to where he sat and he gave me an encouraging nod. "We're a family, not a traditional one by some people's standards, but a real family nonetheless." I took a breath and continued. "Last week, my daughter completed a family tree project. She included both of us because we're both her parents in every meaningful way. Her teacher suggested I ask her to redo the project and only include me, to avoid making other families uncomfortable." Murmurs rippled through the audience. I pushed forward. I refused. Because teaching my daughter to hide the truth about people who love her sends a terrible message. It tells her that our family is something shameful. That Andres, who reads to her every night and teaches her to tie her shoes and bandages her scraped knees, doesn't count because he doesn't fit someone else's definition of family. My voice grew stronger. I understand that some parents may have personal beliefs about family structure. That's their right. But their beliefs don't erase my family's existence. Their discomfort doesn't make my children any less deserving of acknowledgement and respect. A woman in the third row stood up. "But what about our right to control what our children are exposed to? Some of us don't want our kids confused by alternative lifestyles." Before I could respond, another parent stood, a woman I vaguely recognized from the park. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. My daughter Emma is in Katie's class." And Emma isn't confused at all. She understands perfectly well that some families have one parent, some have two moms, some have grandparents raising them. Kids aren't confused by diversity, adults are. Another voice from the back. "My son has been to Julian's house for play dates. He comes home talking about how Katie's family plays board games and makes funny pancakes. That's what he notices. Not the gender of the parents." Suddenly more people were standing, more voices adding support. Not everyone I could see hostile faces too, people shaking their heads in disapproval. But there were more allies than I'd expected. Andres stood and walked to join me at the microphone. His presence beside me was grounding, strengthening. "My name is Andres Cole," he said into the microphone. "I'm not Katie and Sam's biological father. I'm not even legally their parent yet. But I love those kids like they came from my own body. I would do anything to protect them, support them, give them a good life." His voice wavered slightly with emotion. "And what hurts most isn't people questioning my role in their lives. It's knowing that Katie might grow up thinking she needs to lie about her family to be accepted. That Sam might learn to hide parts of his life to avoid judgment. That's what's at stake here. Whether we teach children to embrace diversity or to fear it." The board members were whispering among themselves. Finally, the chairperson spoke. This is clearly a complex issue that requires thoughtful consideration. We'll be discussing policy changes regarding family representation in classroom projects. No final decisions will be made tonight, but the board commits to creating guidelines that respect all family structures while being age-appropriate for our students. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was something, a promise of change rather than immediate rejection. As the meeting concluded, several parents approached us. Some offered support and shared their own stories. Others looked at us with thinly veiled disgust and hurried their children away. But we'd spoken our truth publicly, and the world hadn't ended. Driving home, Andres reached over and laced his fingers through mine. "You were incredible up there." "We were incredible," I corrected. "I couldn't have done that alone." "You wouldn't have had to. That's what partnership means." When we got home, the babysitter reported that both twins had gone to bed easily. We paid her, and after she left, we collapsed onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. "Do you think it'll make a difference?" I asked. "I don't know, but at least we tried. At least Katie and Sam will grow up knowing we fought for them." He pulled me against his chest. "That counts for something." We sat in comfortable silence for a long time before Andres spoke again, his voice soft and serious. "I love you, Julian." My breath caught. We'd said a lot of things to each other over the past months, but never those 3 specific words. "I love you too," I whispered back, feeling the truth of it resonate through my entire body. He kissed the top of my head. "I want this to be permanent. I want to be their legal parent. I want to wake up here every morning for the rest of my life." "Is that crazy?" "No." I tilted my head up to look at him. "It's not crazy at all. It's exactly what I want too." "Yeah?" His smile was brilliant and relieved. "Yeah. You're ours, Andres. Completely ours." He kissed me then, deep and slow and full of promise. And I knew, regardless of what battles we'd face going forward, we'd face them together. Our family wasn't traditional, wasn't what everyone expected or approved of, but it was built on love and commitment and fierce protectiveness. And that made it perfect exactly as it was.